This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 230 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's a special episode and it's just me today, and I wanted to talk to you all about things that 2020 taught me about the concept of travelling versus vacationing or holidaying or even staycationing. It's been on my mind a lot lately, not least of all because I haven't left my home state of Western Australia for well over a year now. And I am very aware of the extremely privileged position I'm in. I'm in a state which is essentially COVID-free with no restrictions. And although we can't travel very far, we can travel to most parts of Australia these days. I haven't for various reasons. We'll get to that. But we can't leave Australia. But apart from that, our lives are pretty normal. So we are super lucky. And I do want to preface this whole discussion by just letting everyone know I am very aware of that. I am very privileged and fortunate position to be in. But, there's always a but. Travel has always been a really important part of my life and an important part of my son's life as well. So to suddenly not be able to travel and, for that to have lasted now for more than a year has been quite an unusual situation, and it has taught me a lot. So I'm sitting here today in my office in Perth, and it's a Sunday, and I don't know if any of you live near a park where they play cricket, but it's one of those glorious sunny days with a light breeze. It's just perfect. I went for my morning walk and it was beautiful, not too hot, not too cold. And right now there's a cricket match playing opposite my house in the park. It's just a local club. No stars, but there's something so quintessentially Australian to me about sitting here listening to a cricket match. And if you don't have that privilege ever, then what it sounds like is it's mostly very quiet and there's a few thumps and bumps. There's a bat hitting the ground occasionally, and now and again a bat hitting a ball very cleanly, some gentle applause from the players themselves, and very occasionally someone will get out and there'll be a bigger cheer. And it's a very sedate sport to listen to, and it lasts all day because, in case you don't know, some cricket matches can last for a full 5 days. So these ones don't go for 5 days because these people have to go back to work tomorrow, most of them, I think. But it's just such a lovely background noise. And that's one of the things that I have learnt this year from staying home a lot more, is to really appreciate the things around me. I have paid so much more attention to what happens in and around my home, to when the various birds come along. Living opposite a park with an enormous number of huge trees means we have always lots of bird life coming around. In fact, I've got a clip I'll insert so that you can hear some of my bird life. It's typical that we can hear all kinds of birds. My favourites are the ravens because they're pretty clever, I think. I like to chat to them outside. And the kookaburras are always an interesting one as well because, well, they kind of make me giggle as well because they're laughing. So I have paid so much more attention to what's around me, and I appreciate that. And there's lots of other things I've learnt to appreciate about either staying home more or travelling close to home. It's been nice to explore more parts of my home state. There's always new and exciting and interesting stuff to find, even in a place that you know well. I've lived here for most of my life, apart from 5.5 years abroad. So I know, the area around Perth pretty well, but there's still beautiful things to see, especially For example, last year I got out to see the wildflowers a lot more often and, a bit more into the outback to see them. And there are so many parts of my local area and, within a few hours drive with just beautiful landscapes, stunning landscapes, huge skies, still interesting people to meet and chat to. And in Perth, for example, we had the new museum, Bula Bardip, open this year, and it's amazing. And I could go back there again and again and again. So there's lots of really wonderful things about travelling close to home. One thing that I have tried out and I find I need to juggle so that I enjoy it properly is a super close to home vacation. We often hear say a staycation, so staying in a hotel, maybe in Perth or close to Perth. And I've done this a couple of times. I've done it a few times over the years for various reasons, but usually for an occasion like a birthday or something. But this year, to get that travel feeling, we've done it a few more times. And it's a good way to break the routine. So it's nice to get away from the housework, to be perfectly honest. If you're staying in a hotel somewhere, then you don't remember that the floor needs vacuuming, or you can't see a pile of washing that hasn't been put away. And there's you can't do anything about it because you're not there. So that guilt disappears, which is wonderful. And it is also kind of an opportunity to indulge a little or treat yourself, to not cook, to do those kinds of things. And in fact, thanks to COVID, I was more busy than ever with my work in the last 12 months, surprisingly. Not what I thought when it first hit, but that's the way it worked out. And so those occasions where we've had a staycation have been a fabulous time to actually have a chance to stop and chill out a little bit and reward myself with, extra time to read a good book or a nice meal or, a tasty dessert, those kinds of extra treats. But I'm just not sure. It's just not the same. It's not as sustaining and refreshing as real travel. And in fact, this was a topic that I brought up in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group, the whole idea of, what do you do when you staycation? Can you relax? Do you still need to explore? What's your feeling? And so in a moment, I'll just share some of those responses from the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group members, because it was interesting to see, probably not that surprising, but interesting to note that the majority of you felt the same way that I did. So, from the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group, Nat said, "We love a staycation and do them often. I usually plan something, like a trip to the art gallery or museum, though. The joy of a staycation is you're close to home, so very little driving, but there's no responsibility or push factors to do the washing, clean up, etc. Being at home where there's always stuff to do can be wearisome. Nice to mix it up and explore like a tourist." So I think I agree there with Nat. Staycation is good, but you want to be doing some other things. And another Thoughtful Travel group member, Justine, said the same. She said, "I'm with everyone else who can't do total relaxation. We had a staycation in Fremantle in January and we touristed like normal. I always want to make the most of the time away." And this making the most of the time away thing came up as a theme quite often in those responses. And I think that a thoughtful traveller often wants to make the most of that time. And what making the most of that time is can be different to everyone. And I think we went on to discuss, kind of how that is, the wasting time versus what you're going to do and can you rest. And there was an interesting response from Leda, and she said, "After planning a trip to a new place, it feels wasteful to just relax in bed or a spa. That's what the weekend at home is for. But I enjoy having a few relaxing days on a trip where I repeat favourite dishes or places. And if I overdo the sightseeing and museum binging, it's nice to have a day off and enjoy the small things around you." I think that's a really good attitude to go with. And Philippa also had a great answer, which, I definitely agree with. And it's kind of a twist on what do we mean by relaxing or staycationing. And she said, "I think it depends on how you define relaxing and even whether relaxing is an action in itself. I have had staycation type trips which I found extremely relaxing. For example, when I was living in Myanmar, I used to head over to the Lao Hills to decompress in a wonderful eco-lodge. Almost a staycation as it was nearby and not a proper trip, and always for what was termed R&R, rest and relaxation, in recognition of the intensity of living and working in an intense environment. I would read, swim, explore the nearby villages, photograph butterflies and write. So not exactly doing nothing, but not exactly doing busy stuff either. I would love to be spontaneous and head off along a new path or follow an idea. So I think that I would achieve that relaxing through activities and being in a different place. I completely agree with what Philippa has said there, and I think it's the combination of when we can have a semi-relaxing holiday close to home that is not quite real travel. As she said, it wasn't a real trip in her case, not a proper trip. You may be not going somewhere stunningly new to you, but there's always other things that you can do to get that holiday feel, that travel feel, I think more correctly said, of exploring and meeting new people and seeing new things in a way that I think is super refreshing. So it was an interesting conversation that we had, and on the whole, nobody was very good at sitting still on any kind of trip, whether close to home or far away, according to my survey there in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group. On our staycations during 2020 and more recently, I have made a real effort. Well, actually, I didn't need to make the effort. I couldn't help myself to get out and about, no matter what the area was where we were staying and no matter how well I thought I already knew it. Just getting out, and even if it's just bumping into people and learning something new about, what they're doing there, or I don't know, just getting out and about. I'm not very good at sitting by the pool all day. In fact, impossible for me. Even with a good book, I need to feel that I've gone beyond the walls of wherever we're staying. But it's a good combination, I think. But I've thought a lot about, why is this not enough? Why is travelling close to home, or to be honest, if I'd had the chance to travel within Australia, even that's not quite enough. Sadly, of course, I haven't got to travel within Australia yet. Every time I've tried, it's been cancelled thanks to COVID. And in fact, I was just in the last week or so starting to look at airfares again and thinking about what we might do and starting to feel, okay, maybe I'll give it a go again soon. And this morning on the news, there's cases again, COVID cases in New South Wales and Queensland. And I know compared to the rest of the world, the cases are virtually none, but we do have a lot of history of borders being closed quickly and retrospective quarantine, especially here in Western Australia, which I'm fully in support of. I'm happy to live in a COVID-free environment, but it does make it harder to try and book a trip. And honestly, the disappointment of when they get cancelled, it's actually worse than just not planning it. So for now, I don't think I'm going to be booking any flights for some time to come, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see. I'm itching to. But anyway, despite that, obviously we won't be able to get out of Australia for a little while at least. And that is the part that I find the hardest because, in Australia we all speak English. We all speak Aussie English. I understand everyone. The culture, I pretty much understand everywhere. There's pockets of really interesting stuff. There's fabulous, amazing things in Australia. Absolutely. But it's not as challenging to travel in your home country as it is to travel abroad. I miss the challenge of not knowing the language and of trying to learn the language and trying to understand, at least some basics. I miss the challenge of learning how everyday things work and not even having the language sometimes to work that out. Like, how do I take this bus? Where do you even buy a ticket for this bus? How do I figure out where it's going? How do I know when to get off? All of just little things like that are amazing. I miss the excitement of landing in a new place and not really knowing anything about what it's going to be like. In Australia, I can land somewhere and I have a pretty good idea. But I can travel abroad, and even if it's a place I've been before, it's still so fresh and inspiring for me. I really miss not having a clue about the culture and, trying to figure out, why is this person, I don't know, going to this temple and doing this action? What's that all about? Or, I don't know, you're in a new country on a public holiday or, a national holiday and, what are they doing? What's this parade all about? What's this ritual mean? And, heading to Google 25 times that night to try and figure out and understand more, or asking local people, asking your hosts where you're staying, or a guide if you're on a tour, and all of those, I don't know, those totally inspiring, creative making, really, really important bits of information that my brain craves. And I think it's just not the same. And I really, really miss that. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on traveling versus vacationing, I suppose. I put together a top 3 of the reasons I really want to travel again in the future. Because there's times, and I'm sure I'm probably not alone in this, there's times when I think, the world has changed so much. Who knows? Maybe we'll never really be able to travel, quote unquote, properly again. But I live in hope. I'm sure we will. And I'm just having one of those moments. But I wrote my my top 3. Oh, yeah, because I think what's missing now is the anticipation of a big trip. And I think even my son's, suffering from that, because in his whole life, he's always had some big trip coming up, even if it's, nearly 12 months down the track. There's always something on the horizon. And I think that it's a way to mark time. For example, just yesterday he was asking me about when the next federal election will be here in Australia, because we had a state election this weekend and he doesn't know, how long they are between and so on. And we're discussing it and he said, well, when was the last federal one? And I could quickly say, oh, well, it was 2 years ago because it was when we were in Copenhagen. And we had a chat about what we'd done. I mean, I remember the very day we'd been on a harbour cruise in Copenhagen. And afterwards, to celebrate the election back home, we had hot dogs, Danish hot dogs, but good hot dogs, because, of course, the tradition in Australia on election day is to have a democracy sausage or a sausage sizzle when you go down to vote at the local school. So we discussed all of that, and it's easy to pin important moments in life compared to when you've had these major trips. Well, certainly it's what happens in our life, and we should have had our, major trip for Christmas last year. And at the moment, there's just kind of, I don't know, years ahead, and we don't really know what's going on, and that's a bit weird. But anyway, as I was saying before that little segue, my top 3 reasons to travel properly, because I can't wait to really travel again soon. And number 1 is that I want to see friends and relatives who I haven't been able to see. And actually that applies within Australia as well, not just abroad. I've been very grateful to be able to keep in touch with many of them, in many, many ways, whether it's just messages or, video calls or all kinds of ways. So I'm grateful for that. But face-to-face is definitely my preferred way of catching up with people. And it's one of the most fun parts about traveling for me, is to be able to go to places where I can see my good friends and some relatives as well in the flesh in various states and countries around the world. So that's number 1 reason. Number 2 is really to be able to get that inspiration of being in an unusual and different place. There's nothing like it for me. I don't know if all of you would agree, or if some of you can get that kind of that inspiration in other ways. For me, it's so essential to be away from home, to have everything turned on its head, to be, like a child, wondering what's happening around you, all of that kind of stuff. It's just super important to me. And the third reason is the need to fill up my brain again it's a very curious brain, and I think many thoughtful travellers will say the same, that they've got insatiably curious brains. And there's lots of ways to fill up that brain. I've been doing my best while at home. There's lots of ways to learn the kinds of things I want to learn. But it's different to be there. So I can read a billion books, but actually being in a place is an experience that no book can provide. I can watch 100 movies or 1,000 TV series, but it's not the same as being there. And I think it's also a case of you don't know what you don't know. And so I can search out and seek out things that I'm curious about while I'm here at home. But if I travel and I'm somewhere new, things come to me, things I wouldn't even expect to imagine to even ask about. I mean, the couple of years I lived in Japan, that was a classic case of I would be confronted nearly daily by things that I wouldn't even imagine that I didn't know, like, taking your new car to the temple to get it blessed and how important that was to a lot of my friends and students there. Little things like that I didn't even know I didn't know. So that filling up my curious brain, that's my third big reason that I want to travel. And those are those three reasons why I think, traveling is such a different experience to, vacationing or holidaying or staycationing or anything that's not quite the same as going to a strange new place, I suppose. And preferably, I do have a preference for a place where I don't understand much about what's going on. The more different, the better. I think that is the kind of place where, I don't know, I'm stretched more and I just love it. So that's that. Let's hope that by the time of our next special episode in another 10 episodes, the world is looking a little bit clearer. I know in lots of parts of the world that the vaccinations for COVID-19 are rolling out fairly quickly. A little bit slow here in Australia. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Of course, we're not in imminent danger with very few COVID cases. But, it does mean that the timetable for future travel is, being pushed out a bit longer. So we'll see. But in any case, thank you so much for listening to episode 230 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. And I would love to hear how you're faring with this strange travel year or two, how you're going in terms of getting that travel fix while you stay home. I know for lots of you listening, you have done way more staying home than me, like, many thousands % more of staying home. And I hope that you're finding ways to satisfy that travel bug, even though you can't go far at all. And let's hope that soon we can. So there'll be show notes with a couple of extra bits and pieces, some photos and stuff at notaballerina.com/230. And of course, don't forget to come and join the Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers if you're not there already. And last but not least, if you have been enjoying listening to the Thoughtful Travel podcast over the years, it's in fact the 5th birthday coming up very, very soon. Watch out for a celebration. Come and join us on Patreon and support the podcast. You can find that by going to notaballerina.com/support. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.